6 solid months of walking in all weather conditions stopped me from having a heart attack. And if you're new here or you're returning, this is part 4 of the night that changed my life forever, the recovery. If you haven't seen part 1, 2, and 3, I suggest you click subscribe, like, comment, and come right back. It has been 6 ongoing months of back-to-back appointments, both when I was admitted as a patient and when I was discharged as an outpatient. And along the way, there has always been something else. I had a cast on my arm that was taken off and replaced with a wrist splint, but I still had a wound dressing. My C-collar was taken off. I was discharged from outpatient physio, but I still had the dressing on my arm. The dressing on my arm came off, and then I found out that I had to have another surgery. I have been having some major recovery wins, but I almost feel like they've been clouded because there's always been something else, another follow-up to do, another appointment to have, another thing to check or double check. And you really don't realize how far you've come until you remember where you're coming from. I think everybody has expected talking about the accident itself to be the most difficult part about all of this. And the reason why that isn't difficult is because I don't have any recollection of the accident itself. I don't know how it happened, where it happened, when it happened. I have no clue about that. But do you know what's etched in my memory? My recovery. My recovery has been every single day since the 9th of May. We can see how I've physically recovered, but I can't even begin to explain how I've mentally and emotionally recovered. The saying goes something like, you don't know how strong you can be until strong is the only choice you have. And man, have I had to be strong. I have had to hold on to what hope really looks like, what faith really looks like, what belief truly looks like. Because without all 3 of those plus more, I would not be sitting where I am right now. I've had some tough times in this life of mine. This completely trumps it all. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And it's quite hard to keep hearing, you're so strong, you're so brave, because I haven't had a choice to be anything else. I've recently started watching Grey's Anatomy. I'm only on season 3, so don't come for me. And through season 2, one of the current main characters had to have an emergency surgery on his operative arm, which is his right hand. And after the surgery, he realized or was having some complications with the use of his hand, which he's a surgeon, he needs that hand to do his job. And watching that scene brought me back to waking up with my arm in a cast and not being aware of how broken my arm actually was. And when I think about it, I think quite literally from my shoulder right through to my little finger was broken. But do you know what brought me solace? It's my non-dominant arm. I'm not left-handed, I'm right-handed. And I have broken my right hand before when I was 16. We got through that phase. That was only 6 weeks and it wasn't anything really to write home about. In this same scenario, I learned about what post-operative depression is. So this is simply when you have an operation and you realize that you cannot do the things that you were able to do. So with that surgeon, he discovered that he wasn't able to use his hand in the same way. He developed a tremor, which is to do with your nerves. So he wasn't able to keep his hand still in order to sew organs back. But as you get older, you learn to appreciate more the function of your body and why you need 2 hands. Regardless of this is my non-dominant or not, you still need it. And what we do as humans is we find ways to navigate through the storm. And trust me, this was a tornado. Last summer, I started a new job and the buses were on diversion. So really, there was no way for me to get to work except to walk. And that walk was an hour and 10 minutes each way. An hour and 10 minutes there, an hour and 10 minutes back. And that was in June. In October, they put up a sign to say that the roads would be open. But this is already 4 months of walking at this point. So it makes no difference. My colleagues would ask me, what are you going to do when it snows? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And so said, so done. I walked an hour plus in the snow, there and back. And everybody talks about how important exercise is for your mental health. It wasn't easy pushing through all different types of weather. I draw the line at rain. Rain is where I draw the line. If it's wet outside, we have to do something else. Once it's not fully snowing, I now realize I am capable. That entire way, as cold as it was mind over matter. I can, so I will. And I just kept going. There were some mornings that I was like, okay, this is just ridiculous. I'm not gonna walk. And I would not time the bus properly. I find myself walking. Granted it's a 10-minute walk to the bus stop from the house, and then it's at least 20 minutes from the bus stop to my workplace. So I just convinced myself that the half an hour wasn't going to make a difference at all. When I think about what happened on the scene, I think that 6 solid months of walking in all weather conditions stopped me from having a heart attack. I genuinely believe that my cardiovascular was built from walking from June right through to January. And the only reason why I stopped walking in January was because I changed location and it wasn't physically possible to walk from where I was to work. For anybody that knows me, knows exercising is not my thing at all. I will not lift a weight. I will not push a weight. I will not dust a weight. I just don't go near them. We make jokes about how small I am, but really the size of me didn't matter. I survived being this small. I might have survived being this big, but we'll never know. I took pride in walking 12 kilometers a day. And again, we can always bring everything that happens in my life back to travel. I've definitely got my steps in on that front. To go from walking that level, it does something to your mental health. It shifts your whole energy. They say we take the little things for granted, but as it goes, you just become accustomed to life blessings. You know that waking up is a blessing, having a roof over your head is a blessing, having something to eat is a blessing, being able to clothe yourself for all weather conditions is a blessing. These are not little things on the grand scheme of everything. For me, there were so many different things I had to process. I had to process becoming adjusted to having my C-collar on 24/7. As restrictive as it looks is as restrictive as it is. I have found myself constantly adjusting my neck now, and I don't even have the C-collar on anymore. I have heard what I deem as horror stories that there are patients that take it off. And I just think that they must not know the severity of the injury that they have as to why they have to wear it. I didn't even know the severity of the injury. They just told me I had to wear it. And that was the end of the discussion. Having my arm in a cast, you can see my wrist is nothing. My cast was so heavy and it was putting strain on my shoulder, having to lift this thing up all the time. But I got through it. My sacrum has taught me that I don't think any of us sit correctly. I can almost promise you, even now that you're watching this, you're probably not sitting correctly. Just do me a favor, try to Google what and where your sacrum is. It is literally the in-between. So where we normally sit on our back, we're supposed to sit on our bum cheek. So I've had to relearn how to sit properly. 1, to keep my spine in place, and 2, to take the pressure off of my now recovering and bruised sacrum. I definitely do not have a bum, so sitting down was also not the most comfortable experience before this, but now, yeah, it's a different ball game. Give me all the cushions. I recently read one page of one of my documents, and it says that I had to have an emergency splenectomy, which makes sense. Your spleen ruptures, it's internal bleeding. We know how that could end. But through reading it, I found out that some of my ribs on my right side were also injured. And going back to the previous vlog about the amount of pain that I was in, it's just not physically possible for me to put into words how bad the pain was. But I had had so many injuries that I had to recover from. My brain just couldn't process where do we start. So the moment I became overwhelmed with where do we start, I just started talking to myself to remind my entire body that we are one team and we all have to work together. Working together meant no one part had to do more than the other. Every part was able to just do what they could. And obviously, given the fact that my right side was completely fine, it meant that everything on my right side was working so much harder to compensate the lack of use on my left. I remember having to use a spirometer, which was to essentially stop me from getting pneumonia. The spirometer is to measure your breath. So it has different lines on it. Depending on how well you're doing, they will increase the line. There's been so many moments on this journey that have brought me either to tears or close to tears. But each win was something that was worth the tears falling, and I just couldn't get into that zone. Thinking about not being able to inhale properly and having to use something to enhance my breathing. And the day I just did it randomly, and me and the kid were just so ecstatic. As you get older, you start to not hear as much praise for everything that you're doing. And having him there with me along the way, giving me all the accolades plus more, is something I'm just never going to be able to put into words. He was as happy for me as I was for me. The difference was he was able to physically show the excitement. All I could do was wipe my eyes because I couldn't believe it. When you're in hospital, the nurses pay so much attention to you that they notice the wins with you, so you have somebody to go through it with you. When you come out of hospital, especially when you've been there for 7 weeks and it's just hour after hour, day after day, praise on every little thing that you're doing, when you get home you realize that you have to continue to keep doing even if nobody is going to praise you. And that is one of life's painful things, that you have to be your own cheerleader. Regardless of if people are praising you and telling you how well you're doing and how proud of you they are, you have to keep going. And so I did. I went from being solely dependent on using my walking cane around the house to get to the kitchen, to get to the back garden, to try and get up the stairs, to get down the stairs, to take the few steps to the bathroom. At that point, I had a PSW, both morning and night, and they would help me get ready in the morning, quite literally help me shower, get my clothes on, and go about their way. And then a different one would come in the evening to help me shower, get my pajamas on, and go on their way. And in general, I'm quite body shy. I don't know. I love a bikini, but I do not love my naked body. And you get to a point that you just have no choice but to allow the people to do what you need them to do. Having them praise me for just being able to scrub my own arm, or being able to scrub my own back, or being able to lotion my legs, it just gave me the motivation to keep going, like somebody is happy for you. And of course I would message my friends, but I can't feel their reaction where I could feel these health professionals' reaction. I remember my nurse's reaction when my wounds were starting to actually turn the corner for healing. I remember my physio's reaction when I was able to stand longer on one foot than I had done. I remember the surgeon's reaction when he told me I could take my C-collar off. Just make sure I'm not riding any horses or heading any footballs whilst I'm playing sports. This recovery has been personal. It's been personal to my growth. It's been personal to my strength. It's been personal to the little girl that really didn't think that she was going to make it in life and thought that she needed people to help her get to where she's going to get to. And it's proven that no man is an island, but I've shown myself countless times, if I need to get it done, I am going to do it. I am going to show up for myself. I am going to congratulate myself. I am going to be proud of myself. And if I have a team of people cheering me on, so be it. I welcome it with open arms. But if there is nobody shouting for me, I need to shout for myself. Taking my first steps with my physio, having had her just meet me that morning, and she came with a walker, as in I should have been using something with my 2 arms to push my body to move. In 2 minutes, she said, "You're not gonna need this, are you? Let's go to the gym." I have worked so hard to be mentally strong because whatever happens to my physical, this needs to be intact. I breathe life into myself now. I never used to. I used to be so pessimistic about everything because I couldn't see the optimism in anything I was doing. I couldn't see the end result. I couldn't hear the congratulations. So half of the time I did a half-hearted job. I got it done, but it was half-hearted. So even I couldn't really be proud of myself because I know how I got there. Optimism trumps all. Optimism wins. Happiness wins. Taking those first steps of my physio and having her be as proud of me as she was meant so much to me because she didn't know me just 2 hours ago. She hadn't seen how far I'd come from. I remember leaving Syracuse, and on that morning I was able to get onto the slide board by myself. Bearing in mind the first physio session I had, my physio had to physically lift me out of the bed to get me into the recliner chair so I could sit and watch TV. And just 2 weeks later, I was literally pushing myself from the bed onto the slide board, into the recliner, onto the stretcher. There's something about showing up for yourself. No matter how proud everybody is of me, nobody is going to be prouder of me than me. To think all I had to do was believe in myself. All I had to do was talk to myself, convince myself, lie to myself, if you will. They say you fake it until you make it. And I genuinely feel like I've made it. From the person that I was before that used to break down and cry at everything, I recently learned a terminology, anticipatory anxiety. And I never got diagnosed with this, but I had that. I was 1000% worried about what is next, what is to come. Will it be better than what I have now? And because of that, I couldn't really enjoy what was happening there and then. I was so wrapped up in it doesn't feel like it's working out. So guess what? It wasn't. I thought the last hurdle was going to be being discharged from the at-home care rehab, to just sit there and find out that I'm going to have another surgery for something that was done incorrectly at the first surgery. And I had told a couple of people, and the first question they asked me is if I'm going to sue the surgeon. I don't know why that is the mentality, because even though it wasn't done correctly, it was still done. I had 3 screws that were too long in my forearm, and they were pressing on my scar tissue, causing a great amount of discomfort and sensitivity and lack of feeling to my thumb. To be honest, when I had the first x-ray, I noted that there was some swelling on this side, but I just assumed it would go down. The cast has just been taken off. Let's see how it goes. And as time went on, that x-ray looked the exact same as it did on day 1, until one day I realized that when I flex my wrist, it clicks. And so the day I had one of my last x-rays for my arm, I asked the x-ray tech, how many x-rays are we doing? And she said, oh, just your upper arm. And I immediately said, what do you mean, just my upper arm? I have hardware in the whole of this arm. I have a plate all here, a plate here. Why would we only be doing the top half? And she asked me, is there something wrong with my forearm? And I said, yeah, put your hand here. And even as I'm doing it now, it's so funny to think exactly where the screws were is what was bothering me. She told me to tell the surgeon, hopefully he'll get me back in for another x-ray right there and then. And I let the first x-rays come. My humerus is just fine, healing just well. No screws going into any joints or muscles or anything like that. And so I asked him, why didn't we do for the forearm? He said, is there something wrong? And I told him, yeah. I said, come and feel this. He was like, oh, it feels like the screws in there might be too long, but let's do an x-ray so we can confirm. We did the x-ray and something just told me, you're not gonna like what you hear. He says, oh yeah, I was right. The screws are definitely too long and they need to come out. I was like, come out? He was like, yeah, they have to be surgically removed. Disappointment is the only thing I can tell you, because I was this close to seeing the finishing line. And now you tell me I have to take some few steps backwards. I did not plan for that at all. He was honest enough to let me know that it was a choice. I did not have to remove the screws. But when I weighed up the pros and cons of keeping the screws, the fact that it could move and clip a nerve was enough for me to just make peace with the fact that the screws need to come out. I don't think that anybody should not be able to do something something. If you've been told you're going to make a full recovery, you shouldn't have to not be able to do something if the recovery is full. So I sit with myself for a bit, talk to a few people, and they're ecstatic. Well, yeah, this is great news. The great news is that it's a removal of the screws and not a replacement of the screws, meaning that my bone has healed enough to not have the screws still there to hold them in place. So yes, I will take that. But my goodness, I do not want another surgery. So as time went on, I just ignored it. I just put it on the back burner of life, and I continued working on everything else that I had control over, because this, I did not have control over that. And I went to my pre-op. This is probably one of the first nurses that made me feel uncomfortable about my injuries. Oh, you've got a lot going on there, don't you? Just a little. And I understand the lightheartedness of everything, but I just think that when you see what it looks like in terms that you understand and not what I understand, I just think the snide comments can be left out. Everybody has to process things how they process things. He told me it was going to be a minor surgery or minor procedure, as they call it these days, and it was just going to be quick. He was just going to remove the screws and stitch it back. And so I begged him. I said, please, the surgeon before you did a fantastic job in making it a pencil line. I need you to do the same. I've heard good things about you, and they say you might as well use a ruler to do some of the surgeries that you do. Please, can you make it be as neat as the scar? That's still healing. And I had asked him that because just like before my humerus surgery, I asked about the aesthetic of it. When I got my cast off, I couldn't see that this scar itself was not going to tell a story that I'm not always going to be in the mood to tell. And I just kept praying over it and praying over it and praying and praying and praying that it would heal so that it wouldn't tell a story. And let me tell you about the God that I serve. He answers all prayers, because the scar is getting to the point of non-existent, and we are only 6.5 months into healing. Hearing those words of "we don't need to see you unless there's a concern" brought a joy that I didn't even know I was waiting to experience. I've gone through so many joys that since I've been home, the joys feel drastically slow. The other day, I learned that I can make a fist with this hand. I was not able to do that before. Before, my finger was literally stuck like this, and through months of self-physio, self-feeling, self-talking, just months of work has meant that I can finally clasp my fist. So to get through that appointment and not even need an x-ray to show that it's fine is something I didn't emotionally prepare for. I mean, who can plan for triggers? Let's be honest, but they've just not been anything that I've expected them to be. I haven't been triggered by things that I thought I would have. Watching Grey's Anatomy, for example, I've never seen that many C-collars in my life. And now it's like every episode somebody's being brought in with one under emergency circumstances. I still have my walking cane, but we are already making way of not needing it 24/7 all the time. Every time I leave the house, I've noticed that I'm using it more as a security blanket. For example, if I get on the bus, I know I'm not going to be able to stand and the bus is moving at the same time, and people are not that gracious if they can't see that there's something wrong with you. I bring it because the bus stop isn't close, and I know that when I get on the bus, I need to sit down. And even sometimes there are times when I ask people, can I sit? And the look that they give me is like, do I need to hold my walking cane up so you can see that I actually need it? I don't have a goal for myself. I'm not putting any pressure on myself to reach the full recovery. But the fact that I feel like I'm 80% recovered is a place that I didn't see getting to. I knew I was going to be okay. I just didn't know when. And that's where my faith has come in, because I haven't once questioned, when is it going to do this? I've had so many people ask me, how long am I going to need the walking cane for? And my response always wants to be like rolls eyes. I don't know. But I realize that everything else has pretty pretty much had a time limit. So bones normally take around 6 to 8 weeks to heal. What's happening with my hip isn't a bone issue. It's more of an alignment issue. So where the rod is, it has to align itself with my muscle to stop me from limping. I don't know how long that's going to take, and I'm okay with that. I think the biggest thing was finding out on the day I was being discharged, as in I'm being driven home, and I'm told, you've come so far from them saying that you might not be able to walk again. They said, what? There was a chance that I might not be able to walk? Not me. I don't know how I would have tapped my brain into making sure that my legs move, but no, not walking is no, that's not my story. That's not my portion. That's not my, no, I'm going to walk. And I'm so glad that I got to walk out of the hospital. I was pushed in the wheelchair right up onto the curb, and then I got to take the steps to the car. Let me leave you with this. The only thing constant in life is change. And it's tattooed to me for a point in my life where I just felt like I was only receiving negative changes. I couldn't make in my brain, where is the positive? Where is the joy? Where is the happiness? This is the only thing in life that is constant. Life was so negative at that point that I wanted to get the opposing sentence on this arm, which is the only thing certain in life, is the end. I chose to keep it positive as a daily reminder that life is gonna change. People are gonna change. Situations are gonna change. It doesn't have to be bad forever. It just has to be bad for Q2 of 2025.